Shawn, could you just talk a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, that's kind of a convoluted answer on my part, but at the core, I'm a consultant for service-based entrepreneurs. We help them to fall in love with the idea of being an entrepreneur so that they can reach more people, make a greater impact, and create the lifestyle that they deserve. We do that through various platforms. We have a membership group called Black Diamond Club. We do a group coaching called IPO. We do private one-on-one coaching. And so we offer our offerings through various different platforms and venues.
So how have you guys had to pivot to adjust to social distancing, or how have you helped your members pivot to adjust?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think that everybody now is moving online. They're putting a lot of things online. Now, fortunately for us, our entire business was already online. But as far as our clients are concerned, almost all of them are in some sort of face-to-face service that they offer. And so, we've been moving some of the offerings online, but we've also began to create, and I think honestly, you're going to just see this, and I know that this is part of our discussion today, but we're going to see this going forward, is no longer having like crowded waiting rooms. So people might come to an office, a doctor's office, and wait in their car, receive a text when it's their turn, and then they can come in. So we can limit the traffic or the number of people inside of an office. But also, I think then, the telemedicine and virtualizing almost anything that that doesn't need to be done face to face. It doesn't require a hands-on experience.
So how can other people who are watching this, even if they're not in the same type of business as you, how can they take what you've learned to while you're adjusting and apply it to themselves as well?
Well, I think one of the keys of what we've done in our own business is a shift that has moved the way that we market and the way that we sell. And we made this shift super early on, almost as soon as we saw the idea of a pandemic, even before it was just like a thing, when people were just kind of talking about it and it was happening on the periphery. We began to realize that this was probably going to accelerate a lot of things that we saw coming. I think the pandemic, while extremely inconvenient, all it really did is accelerate a timeline on multiple levels. One was an impending recession, right? And so, the economic impact that we're seeing today probably was something that was going to slowly happen. It just was accelerated and it was amplified. So, I mean, I don't think that it was going to happen to this degree, but it still remains to be seen sort of what kind of bounce back we're going to have when we come back. And so if we get a bounce back, I think it just accelerated and then it amplified it temporarily. And then I think we're going to see it come back, but probably not to, the same levels that we were before. It also accelerated and amplified a movement that was happening relative to a mindset, a shift in the community's thinking. And so our changes, what we've done is we've begun to shift away from what was known as consultative selling and a marketing approach where we were selling a solution to more of a leadership-based marketing and sales approach. And in leadership, we're no longer just selling a solution to someone's problem. We're actually selling a new way of thinking. And look, social distancing, that's a new way of thinking. The economy, there's so many things that are new ways of thinking that have emerged from this crisis. And whatever business you're in, I'm sure that there are aspects. I mean, almost every business owner I meet says, I wish people understood, and then fill in the blank, right? But the shift then is to begin to not just sell the thing that you sell, the product or the service, but to begin to sell the way of thinking that would lead your prospect or your client to naturally engage in whatever it is that you wanted them to do. It's sort of jumping into a precursor. And actually too, it's real interesting. It's you see this a lot in the millennials and the Gen Zs, where they don't want to be sold something. They want to be sold a way of thinking, and they want to arrive at the conclusion of what they need on their own. And so we've just shifted radically our marketing and sales processes. I've got to tell you, it's been incredibly effective for us. And I would challenge all of your viewers or listeners to really begin to think about the way that we've transacted. What you did in February of 2020 most likely is not going to produce the same results in June of 2020. You're going to have to make a shift. And look, one of the other things that I felt was a great message for us is that we haven't taken this time as like a setback. In life, there are naturally these reoccurring timeouts. We had Eric Thomas come and speak to our group, the hip hop preacher, and he said, these are just timeouts. Like if you're playing a basketball game, there's the first quarter ends, the game is not over, but you get this reset. And then you do halftime, and then you do the third quarter. Well, this was just a timeout. This wasn't the end. This was an opportunity for a lot of us to reevaluate our business model and to reinvent ourselves, which is something that's incredible. We get to think about all of the things that were great about our business and do them even better when we go back to business as usual. But we also get to think about the weaknesses that we had in February. And we have an opportunity to innovate, and we have an opportunity to change. And so I think this is an invitation for everybody, no matter what, to really get better at what they already were good at, but also then to innovate and introduce new concepts coming up in June so that you come back. We don't want to recreate the business that you had in February. We want to come back bigger and better in June because we took a time out.
I think that's a great mindset and a great way to think about it. Why do you think that you guys were able to see the change that you need to be made so quickly, so early?
Well, we make a lot of our decisions based off of data, and I think that's super important. And look, I'm not trying to discount intuition or feel, because there's an awful lot to be said about making decisions that feel right in your gut. But also, I think when we're doing business, data drives your business, and if you can separate yourself out and look at the data, you can see trends. We look at a lot of statistics and stats and trends. You look at the economy. I think that, again, with this sort of crisis and everybody looking at the news, now the average American probably is aware of the plunging oil prices to the point where now they're negative, right? They can't pay people to take and store the oil. Whereas probably 6 months ago, if we were to ask somebody what was the price of oil, they didn't know. If we asked people what was the price of precious metals, gold and silver, they didn't know. If we asked somebody where was the stock market, they would say generally it was good. But now I think people wake up and they look, right? And all of this data has always existed, right? So consumeristic trends, where are we buying? What are people thinking? And these things drive your business. And so we were seeing indications way before this that the economy was due for a correction, or we were going to enter into some sort of a recession. And it was really a matter of how deep or how bad it would be. And then again, the coronavirus pandemic accelerated that. But if we were looking at this was already happening. This was already coming. So we should have been course correcting ahead of this. And I got to tell you, one of the things too that's, I don't want to turn it into sort of a conspiracy theory, but in any recession, it's always the top 1% of wealthy people, or of the wealth in the country, who first of all suffer the greatest loss. So I think that's super important. In a recession, the top 1% suffer the greatest loss. However, in the recovery, it's the top 1% who also recover the most. And unfortunately, what this does is it's driving the classes further apart. In essence, the rich get richer and the middle class gets dissolved down. And this is the danger of what we're seeing now with the crisis. And my thing is, I'm not, amongst the wealthiest people in the world. So you struggle, you scratch and claw to stay on that 1% side of that line as the middle begins to dissolve out. Now, again, politically, depending on your philosophies, ideally this should not happen, but realistically this is what's happening. And so we want to make sure that we are always making sure that we are leveraging data, because the 1%, the reason why they gain wealth on the recovery of a recession is because they make decisions. They know when to withdraw their investments. They know when to get out of a market, and market timing is everything in just in business and in life. Timing is everything. And a lot of people think that when you say timing is everything, that means when you get in. But in reality, timing is more important on when you get out. And so when things are going good, you have to be looking at data to begin to decide when you're going to make a course correction before it's mandated or necessitated by government, law, by pandemic, by a market change. And so I think that's been one of the keys to our success, is that we try to anticipate the corrections before they happen. And we are just slightly ahead of the curve on our corrections, which keeps us sort of in the front. And then always has our competitors chasing us down because we're being more proactive versus being reactive.
Is there anything else that you want to share in regards to this discussion?
Well, and I think that everybody keeps saying that, things are going to get better. And I honestly believe that things are going to get better. But as I said earlier, I just wanted to encourage all of your viewers and listeners to not strive to rebuild your life, because I'm sure that everybody has gone backwards to some degree. Even if it's 1%, you've been in your homes forever, but to try and rebuild your lives bigger and better than they were before. I've been targeting June 1st almost since this started. I just said this, every piece of data has indicated that that's more or less when things will go back to normal. But what I've been calling June 1st is the day of reckoning. And what I mean by that is, and it even doesn't matter if you're not even in business, but I want you to be aware of this time off, if you will, this time at home, this time in isolation has caused a lot of people to honestly reflect and question everything they thought to be true. And I always say, look, where you are right now is a direct reflection of the choices that you made to get here. And because everybody suffered some degree of a setback, people are beginning to question their choices. Like, how did I get here? And because of that, the people who know how to market and sell into a person who is beginning to become more receptive to new ideas, to a new way of thinking, those are the ones that are going to win. Those are the ones that are going to dominate in business. Everything is going to change. It's not going to change because of the coronavirus. It's going to change because of what human beings with their minds did during that 6 weeks of isolation, where they began to reflect. It's not going to be autopilot anymore. So every loyalty, every relationship has come under question, and they're going to literally rebuild every element and every aspect of their life beginning in June. And if you want to have a thriving business, you have to basically start over and resell your idea, your philosophy, who you are and what you stand for, to an emerging society that's actually willing to reassess everything and re-engage with you.
I think that those are some great points, and you have a great mindset about this. And I think that everyone listening can probably at least take something away that you mentioned and have something to think about that they probably didn't think about before. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Drew. You're the best. Thanks for having me.